Hello and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, hi, I'm Katie. I'm 28, very newly 28. I'm an ex-teacher who left the profession last summer and I now work full-time self-employed as a content creator. Today I wanted to deep dive into how I built my emergency fund in order to be able to leave teaching. If you follow me on my other socials, then you would have seen that I documented my journey of leaving the profession, everything from packing up my classroom, announcing I was leaving teaching, all the way up to my final day. My journey out of teaching and into the world of content creation has definitely not been a smooth one, and it's had some bumps along the way. So I wanted to go into a bit more depth of how I actually managed to do it, because a lot of people share their journey once they get to a certain point, but they never really go into the nitty-gritty of exactly what they did to lead up to that point. So that is what I'm going to share with you today. We're going to deep dive into the figures, the exact finances. So very quickly, let's give a bit of background. So like I said, I'm 28. I was a teacher. I taught for 3 years in a primary school, and overall I had a pretty good experience, but I did always know right from the get-go that I didn't think this was going to be a long-term career for me. I was in the school that I taught at for 3 years. I was only supposed to be there for 1 as a maternity cover, but I was kept on for 3, and then in the middle of my 3rd year I was given the heads up that my contract wouldn't be able to be extended, and it just came at the perfect time because I was already getting that itch to pursue content creation. So that just kind of gave me the push I needed to leave the profession. When I was leaving teaching to pursue content creation, I was so terrified about finances. I suffer really badly from financial insecurity, so I knew that I needed to have a backup in case anything went wrong. Now, I do have a partner who works full-time. We are homeowners, but that also comes with a very hefty mortgage. So like I said, we needed a backup in case anything were to happen. So if you're not 100% sure on what an emergency fund actually looks like, typically it's 3 to 6 months of expenses that you would have set aside in case anything were to go wrong, and basically you'd have no money coming in. The first thing that I did in order to be able to know exactly what we actually needed was I needed to go through all of our money. If you've seen any of my content on any of my other platforms, then you know that I absolutely love a spreadsheet. I love seeing all the figures right there in front of me because it just makes me feel like I'm actually in control of my finances. I know that can be really scary, really daunting to actually face what is in your bank account, because seeing it in black and white can really slap you in the face. The real first thing I needed to do was work out, okay, what are our monthly expenses? What are the things that are non-negotiable? Things like our mortgage, all of our household bills. We obviously need food, we need petrol. I needed to work out what was the absolute bare minimum that we needed every single month to basically keep our house running and to be able to just function. It's been a little while since I've had to deep dive into these numbers because this was about a year ago now. I will see if I can find my original spreadsheet. If not, I'll give you like a rough idea. I don't know if I have it on my phone. Can't find my exact spreadsheet from that time, but the absolute bare minimum we needed to have each month was £2,700. That's when we started to think, okay, let's focus on 3 months. Let's focus on a smaller goal rather than 6 months. For 3 months, 2,700 times 3. So we needed £8,100 set aside to cover all of our basics just for 3 months. In my head, I had a bigger goal anyway. 3 months was non-negotiable. We had to have that, and then anything else was a bonus. I knew before I left teaching that we needed to have minimum saved up £8,100 set aside for our emergency fund, which is a lot of money to put away when you're already actually paying that out every month for your bills already. In order to do that, I needed to then look at, okay, what do we actually have coming in versus going out? I needed to find out the difference between those two figures. Like I said, my partner was working full-time, I was working full-time as a teacher, and we were both on pretty good wages. And although we had our own home, we didn't have any children or dependents. I'm very aware that was quite a privileged position to be in, but it took a lot of hard work for us to get to that point. Both of us have been out and renting since our teenage years. Both of us have been working since we were 16. I worked 3 jobs alongside my university degree. My partner has always worked since he was 16. He started on an apprenticeship at about £2 an hour. So we have really worked our way up from the bottom, and this emergency fund has definitely not been built overnight. Our long-term goal is to have children and to have a family, so I wanted to be as prepared as possible before that happens and before money is ultimately a lot tighter. So once we figured out what the difference was between our income versus our expenses, and I'm not talking about all the luxury things, I'm talking about the bare bones of our expenses. So once we stripped all that back, we realised that actually while we're both working full-time, we could potentially put away between about £1,000 to £1,500 a month, which is insane. It made me think, what have we been doing with that money up until now? So once we realised that figure, I set ourselves a goal and I said, right, I want the absolute bare minimum that we put away per month to be £1,000, because then that also allows us to have a little bit of extra money and not feel like we are literally just living to work. Again, for a little bit of context, I found out that I was leaving teaching in the January and I was actually paid up until the August. I left teaching in July at the beginning of the summer holidays, but I was paid up until the end of August. Essentially, we had 8 months to sort ourselves out and prepare for the future. Although that was a lot of sacrifice, ultimately we're working towards ourselves, so we're only going to benefit in the long run. I do not regret a single thing. So we had 8 months. I was relentless in those 8 months. I had a goal, I had a vision, and I ran with it. However, we were also able to still do some fun things. So we actually went on quite a few holidays during that time. To be fair, they were pre-booked. But I am such a budget traveller, so I'll get into that in a whole different video. But we went to like 3 different countries within that time. Also, bear in mind, this was in half term because I was a teacher, so I couldn't even go at the cheaper times. Each time between myself and my partner, it would literally cost us less than £500 for flights, accommodation. I'll go into that in a different video. Anyway, I set ourselves that goal. We did it. We still managed to have fun during that time. Of course, we still had to strip back a lot, but it also made me realise how much money we actually had at the time. I never say that as a flex. I say that more as a little bit of a regret of like, if I'd realised maybe like a year before, could we have saved even more? I'm not going to live with what ifs. Whilst we were doing all this, we did realise that there were so many things we could cut back on. There were quite a few subscriptions that we were paying, and there were also things like we were paying for that we didn't even realise. Like I said, we didn't literally cut back on absolutely everything. There were certain things that to us were necessities, even though they technically aren't. So we did not want to sacrifice things like Spotify. We didn't want to sacrifice Netflix. They were 2 things that we use every single day. In order to keep those, because we know they're not necessarily necessities, we just said to ourselves, right, if we're going to keep that, what are we going to get rid of instead? So it's just juggling and also thinking to yourself, what's a priority at the time? In 6 months' time, Netflix may not be a priority. So we would then just focus our attention to something else that we wanted instead. Something else that, again, is not a necessity, but I think it helped us in the long run was we started to pay out for a £2.99 click and collect subscription with Tesco. And I actually think that benefited us because although, yes, we could have saved the £3, I actually found that when we were ordering online and we had a set food budget, which I budgeted for everything, and I still do with all of my spreadsheets, I found that we were actually usually sticking within our budget. When you're putting it in online, you're not in the shops just grabbing random things. I actually think it's so much better. And then we could just go and pick it up and we're not tempted by anything else. Something else we also did, if you've seen any of my budgeting videos, my payday routines on Instagram and TikTok, you will know that Curtis and I have a little bit of a pocket money allowance that we give ourselves each week. And again, this is also to help us feel like we're not always missing out on things. And that's probably the one bit of money that I actually don't track where it goes, because we have our money, we can do whatever we want with it. And maybe I'll do a whole separate video about budgeting and what our payday routines look like, because I do go into it on my Instagram, but you only see about 60 seconds. I can go into a lot more depth over on here. So something I did towards the end of when I was leaving teaching was that I actually got a second job, technically 3 jobs. I started working part-time for a small business local to me and managing their social media, which was perfect as I was going to be moving into the world of content creation. So I started doing that alongside teaching. I also started doing a bit of tutoring. So I did that, one, to help me transition out of teaching. Once I fully became self-employed, I already had a little bit of stability, even though I ended up basically stopping both of those straight away anyway. Also, I wanted to do it so we just had more money behind us, because anything that I ended up earning from those 2 things was extra. We could just put that straight into savings, again is going towards our long-term goal. So by the time that I ended up leaving teaching at the end of August, we did manage to save over 5 figures in our emergency fund, which I am so happy about. It came with hard work, it came with sacrifice, it came with being strategic. Now, not everyone is in the position to do this. Like I said at the beginning, we don't have children yet, we've already bought our home, so our situation is a little bit different to those who might already have families to support and things like that. that. The reason I'm sharing this is to just give a bit of context, because I always think context is key. I think people often compare themselves to people online that they see, and they always wonder, how are they doing that? No one ever really breaks it down of exactly how they got to this step. If this was me a couple of years ago, I would have never been in the position to even leave my full-time job, let alone go self-employed and basically never know when the next paycheck is coming in. It's taken a lot of work and sacrifice and steps to get to this point, and just being really intentional, because a lot of times people don't want to face money. It's a really taboo thing to talk about. No one likes to discuss it. I just think the more you know, the more you can learn. That does not mean that I'm an expert in any way. This is just what's worked for me. This is how I got to the point that I'm now in. I don't know where I'm going to be in a year's time, or 2 years time, or 5 years time. So many things can change. I never thought I'd be in this position a year ago. If you are in the position to take that risk and build up an emergency fund in order to leave your job, or even just have a bit of financial security, it's something I would highly recommend. My biggest piece of advice would be to literally start small. Even if you're only able to put away £10 a month, that's £10 a month that you are putting towards your future, your financial security. And like I've said many times in this video, you're only working towards your own long-term goal. Although you might want that £10 to go and spend on whatever you want today, think about the stability that you are going to provide for your future self, your future family. I know from personal experience that it can literally be life-changing, and you can sleep a lot more peacefully at night knowing that if something went wrong, God forbid, but if it did, you have money to cover yourself, at least just for a little bit of time. Anyway, that's a little bit of context of how I left teaching, how I built my emergency fund. If you have any questions, please drop them down below or send me a DM. You can find me on all platforms at katiemarieshome. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where you'll see a little bit more of my average day in the life and short form videos. I want to use this platform to go into real depth about leaving teaching, about content creation, about budgeting, about homeware, organisation, just literally a bit of everything. So I'd love for you to come and join me on this journey. Feel free to subscribe. Love to get to know you all in the comments. We're really starting from the ground up here with YouTube. I used to make videos way back in the day in 2018. It's been a very, very long time since then, and a lot has changed. So we're really starting from the ground up here. So I'd love to build a little YouTube community over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye.